My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel as I ran every red light between my house and Greenwich Memorial Hospital. The dashboard clock glowed 11:52 p.m. when William's call came through, and I'll never forget the raw terror in my son's voice. "Mom, it's Amber. She's hemorrhaging. They're doing an emergency C-section right now. The baby. Mom, I can't lose my son. I can't." Then he broke down completely, sobbing like I hadn't heard since his father died 3 years ago. I'd thrown on the first clothes I could grab, not even bothering with makeup or jewelry, except for the pearl necklace Richard gave me on our 20th anniversary. My mind raced through every worst-case scenario as I pressed the accelerator harder. Amber was only 37 weeks along. The baby would be premature. What if something went wrong? Despite everything I suspected about my daughter-in-law, despite the Cold War that had frozen our relationship for months, I couldn't wish harm on an innocent child. William's child, my grandchild. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. I abandoned my Mercedes in a loading zone and ran toward the main entrance, my sensible flats slapping against the pavement. The automatic doors seemed to move in slow motion. Inside, the lobby was that particular kind of quiet that only exists in hospitals late at night, all fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell and hushed conversations at the nurses' station. "Greenwich Memorial Surgical Wing, please," I managed to gasp out to the receptionist, a young man who barely looked up from his computer screen. "Third floor, elevators to your right, follow the blue line." I didn't wait for more directions. My heart hammered against my ribs as the elevator climbed. Third floor. The doors opened onto a corridor that stretched endlessly in both directions, blue lines painted on the floor branching off like veins. I followed the one marked Surgical Center and started running again. That's when I saw William. He was pacing outside a set of double doors, marked Authorized Personnel Only, his face pale and streaked with tears, his architect's hands running through his hair over and over in that gesture he'd done since childhood when anxiety overwhelmed him. He looked so much like Richard in that moment that my heart clenched. "William!" I called out. He spun around and I saw the relief flood his features. "Mom, thank God. They took her in 15 minutes ago. Dr. Bradbury said there wasn't time to wait, that she was losing too much blood, that the baby's heart rate was dropping." His voice cracked. "I should have been paying more attention. She said she felt off this afternoon, but I thought it was just normal late pregnancy stuff. What if I waited too long? What if something happens to them because I didn't—" "Stop!" I grabbed his shoulders firmly. "You did exactly what you should have done. You called the doctor, you got her here, and now she's getting the best care possible." The words felt strange in my mouth, reassuring him about Amber when every instinct I'd developed over 57 years screamed that something about this situation felt wrong. But this wasn't the time for my suspicions. William needed his mother right now, not the detective I'd been playing for the past 3 months. "I need to see her," I said. "Where's the surgical observation area?" "Dr. Bradbury said family should wait in the private lounge." William gestured vaguely down another corridor. "He said he'd update me every 15 minutes. But Mom, I can't just sit there." "I can't. Then we'll wait here together," I said, even though my entire body vibrated with the need to get closer, to see what was actually happening behind those doors. We'd been standing there maybe 2 minutes when I saw her. The cleaning woman I'd noticed during Amber's prenatal appointments over the past months, always working quietly in the background. I'd never learned her name, never done more than offer a polite nod when our paths crossed. She was probably in her early 50s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that seemed to miss nothing despite the humble uniform. She was pushing a supply cart down the corridor toward us, but something about the way she moved caught my attention. Too purposeful, too direct. When she got within 10 feet, those dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me in place. "Mrs. Hartford," she said quietly, and I was startled that she knew my name. "I need you to come with me. Right now." "Excuse me?" I instinctively stepped closer to William. "My daughter-in-law is in surgery. I'm not going anywhere. That's exactly why you need to come with me." Her voice was low, urgent, and completely calm in a way that somehow made it more alarming. "Please, Mrs. Hartford, I know how this sounds. I know you don't know me. But in about 30 seconds, Dr. Bradbury is going to come through those doors and tell your son that he can bring you into the observation room. If you go in there, you won't come out alive." The words were so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that I actually laughed. "That's insane. Who are you? William, call security." But William was staring at the woman with confusion rather than alarm. "You're the cleaning lady. You're always on this floor. Esperanza, right? You helped Amber when she dropped her purse last month." "Esperanza Cruz," the woman confirmed. "And yes, I work in housekeeping. But I'm also a retired forensic nurse with 25 years of experience. And I've spent the last 3 weeks documenting a conspiracy to commit murder. Your mother's murder, specifically. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright suddenly. The antiseptic smell too strong. I felt William's hand on my elbow, steadying me. "You're crazy," I whispered. "I wish I was." Esperanza glanced at the double doors, then back at me. "Mrs. Hartford, your daughter-in-law is not having a medical emergency. There's no hemorrhage. The baby is perfectly fine. What's happening in that operating room right now is theater. Staged, rehearsed theater designed to get you close enough to kill. That's absolutely—" I started, but she cut me off. "Dr. Simon Bradbury owes $890,000 to loan sharks. Your daughter-in-law is paying him $150,000 to fake this emergency, and, if the opportunity presents itself, to ensure you have a fatal reaction to anesthesia or suffer a tragic accident during a blood donation attempt." She pulled out her phone with quick, efficient movements. "I have photographs, video, audio recordings. 3 weeks of documentation because I couldn't go to the police without ironclad evidence, and I couldn't let an innocent woman walk into a trap." My knees felt weak. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like us. We were the Hartfords of Greenwich. We attended charity galas and sat on hospital boards and had our family name on a wing of the children's hospital. People didn't plot murders in operating rooms, but Esperanza's eyes held no madness, no uncertainty. Only steady, professional certainty and something that looked like compassion. "Show me," I heard myself say. "Mom, this is insane," William protested. "Amber would never—" "Then we'll look at whatever this woman has and prove her wrong." I was surprised at how level my voice sounded. "But we'll do it somewhere private. Now." Esperanza nodded once, sharp and approving, and gestured to a door marked Supply Room 3B, just down the corridor. "In here. Quickly, before Dr. Bradbury comes out." William looked torn, glancing between the surgical doors and me. "Mom, I should stay. If something happens—" "Nothing is going to happen in the next 5 minutes," Esperanza said firmly. "Your wife is in absolutely no danger because there's nothing wrong with her. But your mother is in extreme danger, and I need both of you to see the evidence before you make any decisions about what to do next." The supply room was small and cramped, stocked with linens and cleaning supplies. Esperanza closed the door behind us and immediately pulled out her phone, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. 3 weeks ago, I recognized Dr. Bradbury from a criminal case I worked on 4 years ago, she began, pulling up a photograph. He was a witness in a medical malpractice case involving intentional negligence. The case was eventually dismissed on a technicality, but I never forgot his face. When I saw him acting as your daughter-in-law's obstetrician, something felt wrong. She showed us a photo of Dr. Bradbury in a hospital parking garage, leaning against a car and smoking with shaking hands. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. I started observing, just watching, old habits from my forensic nursing days. Another photo. This one showed Amber and Dr. Bradbury in what looked like a coffee shop, their heads close together over a table. This was taken 12 days ago at a Starbucks in Stamford. Why would a pregnant patient meet her obstetrician for coffee at an out-of-the-way location? Maybe she had questions, William said, but his voice sounded uncertain. At 7 in the morning in a town 30 minutes from both their homes? Esperanza pulled up a video file. This is from 8 days ago. Hospital parking garage, level 3, watch. She hit play. The video was grainy but clear enough. Amber and Dr. Bradbury standing between 2 cars. And then Amber handed him what was clearly a thick envelope. "That could be anything," William said weakly. "Payment for services. Your insurance covers everything," I said quietly. "She told you that herself. Said Dr. Bradbury was in network." Esperanza pulled up an audio file. This was recorded 6 days ago. Same parking garage. I attached a device to Dr. Bradbury's car. She pressed play. Amber's voice came through crystal clear. And you're absolutely certain the blood packs will look convincing? Dr. Bradbury's response was nervous, stuttering. I've used them before in training scenarios. Animal blood, medical-grade bags. It'll look like a massive hemorrhage. But Amber, if your mother-in-law doesn't show up, or if she doesn't try to help, she'll show up, Amber said, and her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. Constance Hartford is a controlling bitch who can't resist being involved in everything. The moment William calls her in hysterics about his wife bleeding out, she'll race over here like the hero she thinks she is. And when she offers to donate blood or be in the room or whatever savior complex bullshit she pulls, that's when you do it. The anesthesia accident, Dr. Bradbury said, and I felt my stomach drop. Make it look natural. She's 57, heart complications, stress-induced cardiac event, whatever you need to say. William will be too devastated to ask questions, and once she's gone, I'll have complete access to everything. The recording continued. What about the baby? Perfectly healthy, Amber laughed, actually laughed. We'll do a standard C-section, pull him out, and I'll play the traumatized new mother who almost died bringing William's son into the world. He'll be so grateful, so bonded to me through that shared trauma. His mother will be dead. I'll be the mother of his child, and there won't be anyone left to question anything. Esperanza stopped the recording. The silence in the supply room was deafening. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The woman I'd watched marry my son 2 years ago, the woman carrying my grandchild, had just casually discussed murdering me like it was a business transaction. William's face had gone completely white. That can't be Amber. Someone faked that. AI or something. People can fake voices now? Listen to the rest, Esperanza said gently, and there was real sympathy in her eyes as she looked at my son. I'm sorry. I truly am. She played another clip. This one was from yesterday, according to the timestamp. The timing has to be perfect, Amber's voice said. Late enough that there won't be many staff around. You said Thursday night is lightest, right? Between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., we're at minimum staffing, Dr. Bradbury confirmed. But Amber, if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. You do this, I pay you the remaining $75,000, and your loan shark problem disappears. I get William, the baby, and the Hartford fortune without that sanctimonious bitch looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Everyone wins, except Constance Hartford. She should have stayed in her lane, Amber said flatly. She should have accepted that her son had moved on, that he had a new family now. But she just couldn't help herself. Hiring investigators, showing up unannounced, poisoning William against me. This is self-defense, really. William made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. He grabbed the edge of a supply shelf to steady himself, his knuckles white. How much more do you have? I asked Esperanza, and I was oddly proud that my voice didn't shake. 17 recordings total, 43 photographs. Video of them rehearsing the fake emergency yesterday in an empty surgical suite. She looked at both of us steadily. I called the police 20 minutes ago, right after your son's call came through to your home phone. I knew tonight was the night, because I overheard Dr. Bradbury confirming the surgical suite reservation. Detectives are on their way, but they're coming from Hartford and won't be here for another 10 minutes. I needed to make sure you didn't walk into that room before they arrived. My wife, William said, and his voice broke completely. My wife wants to kill my mother, for money. I'm so sorry, Esperanza said again. I looked at this woman who'd spent 3 weeks protecting a stranger, who'd used skills from a career I knew nothing about to document a conspiracy, who'd risked whatever consequences might come from her surveillance to save my life. Why? I asked. You don't know me. Why would you do all this? Esperanza's expression softened. 12 years ago, my sister died from intentional medical negligence. A doctor who was being paid to ensure she didn't survive a routine surgery because of an insurance dispute. I couldn't prove it. I had suspicions, I had my training, but I couldn't prove it. She died, and the doctor walked free. She looked down at her phone, at all the evidence she'd gathered. I promised myself that if I ever saw something like that again, if I ever had the chance to stop it, I would, no matter what it cost me. I reached out and took her hand. Thank you. Thank you for my life. Before she could respond, we heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Then voices. The observation room is just through here, Mr. Hartford. I'm sure your mother would want to see. That was Dr. Bradbury's voice, smooth and professional and completely calm. Esperanza looked at me. What do you want to do? And I realized that for the first time in 3 weeks, maybe 3 months, maybe 2 years, I had complete clarity about exactly what needed to happen next. I want to see her, I said quietly. I want to watch my daughter-in-law perform her little show. And I want to be there when she realizes that every single person in that room knows exactly what she's doing. William looked at me with something like awe and horror mixed together. Mom, she tried to have me killed, William. She married you for money. She's been playing all of us for 2 years. I felt something hard and cold settle in my chest, something that felt like Richard's business acumen mixed with my own survivor's instincts. And now she's going to face exactly what she deserves. Esperanza smiled, just slightly. There's an observation room with one-way glass. Medical students use it. You can watch without her knowing you're there. Perfect, I said. Let's go see what my daughter-in-law has planned for me. I suppose I should have seen it coming from the very beginning, but grief has a way of making you blind to things you'd normally notice immediately. When William met Amber at that charity gala 2.5 years ago, I was still raw from losing Richard. My husband of 28 years had collapsed in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, dead before the ambulance even arrived. Aneurysm. No warning. One moment he was pouring coffee and complaining about the stock market. The next he was gone. William took it harder than I did, I think. He'd always been a daddy's boy, following Richard around the construction sites when he was little, eventually becoming an architect like his father always hoped. When Richard died, something broke in William. He stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping, threw himself into work like a man possessed. I watched my 30-year-old son waste away to nothing and felt completely helpless to stop it. So when he came home 6 months after the funeral with actual light in his eyes for the first time since we'd buried Richard, when he told me he'd met someone special, I wanted to be happy for him. I wanted to believe that my son had found something good in all that darkness. Amber was beautiful. I'll give her that. 27 years old, blonde hair that looked like it cost a fortune to maintain, perfect smile, perfect figure. She worked as a social media influencer, whatever that meant, posting pictures of herself in expensive yoga clothes and talking about wellness and mindfulness to her hundreds of thousands of followers. She told William she came from old money in Boston, that her father was a retired investment banker, that she'd gone to Wellesley. I did what any mother would do. I smiled. I welcomed her to family dinners. I tried to find common ground, but something felt off from the start. The way she looked at our house, at Richard's watch collection, at the paintings we'd collected over the years. It wasn't appreciation. It was calculation. Mom, you're being paranoid, William said, when I gently suggested that maybe 6 months was too soon to propose. Amber loves me for me. Not everyone is after the Hartford money, but I'd built my own fortune from nothing. I came to this country from Poland with $200 and a dream at 23 years old. I'd worked 16-hour days for 25 years, building a consulting firm that I eventually sold for $12 million. I knew what hunger looked like. I knew what ambition looked like. And I saw both in Amber's eyes every time she looked at my son. They got engaged 4 months after meeting. Married 2 months after that. A small ceremony because William said Amber wanted something intimate, just close family. I noticed her parents didn't attend. She said her father was ill. Her mother couldn't travel alone. I noticed she never talked about them much at all. The first year of marriage was fine, I suppose. They lived in William's apartment in Manhattan, a lovely 2-bedroom he'd bought with his own money before Richard died. Amber kept posting her influencer content. William worked long hours at his firm. I saw them for Sunday dinners most weeks. Everything seemed normal on the surface. It was the little things that started adding up. Amber suggesting that William ask me to invest in her friend's new wellness company. Amber mentioning casually that the Manhattan apartment was too small for starting a family, that maybe they should move into that big house in Greenwich that's mostly empty anyway. Amber asking pointed questions about Richard's estate, about my retirement accounts, about the investment properties I owned. She's just curious, Mom, William said. She wants to understand our family better. But I understood exactly what she was trying to understand. The full scope of the Hartford assets. What William would inherit. What could be accessed now versus later. Then, Richard's life insurance finally paid out. $3 million that I split evenly with William, because his father would have wanted him to have it. I put my half into a trust. William used his to pay off his student loans and put a down payment on a bigger apartment. Except he never bought the bigger apartment. Instead, 2 weeks later, Amber suggested they move into the Greenwich house, temporarily, while they looked for the perfect place. That was 18 months ago. They're still there, in my house. The house Richard and I built together, filled with our memories, our life. I tried to be gracious. I tried to remember that William had just lost his father, that he needed family close. I moved into the guest house on the property, gave them space, told myself it was temporary. But Amber had other plans. She redecorated Richard's study without asking me, threw away his favorite chair because it didn't match her aesthetic, started posting photos of our beautiful home on her social media like it was hers, like she belonged there. William, this needs to stop, I finally said about a year ago. This is my home. I gave you both space, but Amber is acting like she owns the place. That's when the real problem started. Amber cried, told William I was being cruel, that I'd never accepted her, that I resented her for taking Richard's place in his heart. It was masterful manipulation. William, still grieving, still vulnerable, believed every word. Our relationship deteriorated fast after that. Sunday dinners became tense affairs. William stopped calling as often. When I tried to talk to him alone, Amber always found a reason to interrupt, to redirect, to remind him of some commitment they had. 4 months ago, Amber announced she was pregnant. William was overjoyed. I was terrified. Because a baby meant permanent connection. A baby meant leverage. A baby meant that even if William eventually saw through Amber's act, he'd never fully walk away because of his child. I hired the private investigator 3 months ago. His name was Marcus Chen, former FBI, the best in the business. It took him 2 weeks to find what I'd suspected all along. Amber's father wasn't a retired investment banker. He was in federal prison for running a Ponzi scheme that had defrauded investors of $43 million. He'd been sentenced 4 years ago. Amber's mother had divorced him and moved to Florida, living in a modest condo on whatever was left after the legal fees and restitution. Amber's Wellesley education? 2 semesters before she dropped out due to unpaid tuition. Her old money Boston background? A rental apartment in Cambridge that she'd been evicted from 6 months before meeting William. The social media influencer career that seemed so successful? Marcus found records of her buying followers, engagement, comments. Most of her sponsors were small companies that paid in product, not cash. She'd been barely scraping by, working part-time at a boutique in Soho, when she somehow got an invitation to that charity gala where she met William. Marcus kept digging, found that Amber had systematically researched William for months before their accidental meeting. She'd identified him as a target, learned his routines, positioned herself perfectly at that event. Nothing about their relationship had been chance. It had all been calculated. I showed William the evidence. Every document, every photo, every piece of proof that his wife had married him for money, that her entire life story was a fabrication. He exploded, accused me of being jealous, controlling, unable to let him have his own life. Said I'd hired someone to fabricate lies because I couldn't accept that someone could love him for himself. Amber stood beside him, tears streaming down her face, playing the wounded victim so perfectly, I almost believed her myself. "You need to leave, Mom," William said, and those words cut deeper than anything else. "Get out of our house. I don't want to see you until you can apologize to my wife and accept our family." Our house, not my house, our house. I left. Moved to a hotel, then rented a furnished apartment in Greenwich. Waited for William to cool down, to think rationally, to see reason. But Amber moved fast. Within a week, she'd convinced William to add her name to 3 joint bank accounts totaling $2.3 million. Within 2 weeks, she was suggesting that we set up a trust fund for the baby, $5 million, with her and William as co-trustees. Within a month, she'd isolated William from our extended family, from his college friends, from anyone who might question her version of events. I watched my son disappear into her web and felt powerless to stop it. That's when I started showing up at Amber's prenatal appointments. Not to cause trouble, just to remind her that I existed, that I was watching, that I wouldn't be erased from my grandchild's life, no matter how hard she tried. I saw Esperanza during those visits, the quiet woman in the blue uniform, always cleaning, always in the background. She'd nod politely when we made eye contact. I never imagined she was seeing everything, documenting everything, preparing to save my life. 2 weeks ago, I'd gone to the Greenwich house one last time. I still had a key. I needed to get some of Richard's things, photographs and letters that I couldn't bear to leave behind. I'd timed it for mid-morning when I knew William would be at work. I found Amber in Richard's study, on the phone, speaking quietly. I stood in the doorway and listened. "Yes, everything is proceeding as planned," she was saying. "Once the baby is born and she signs those trust documents, we'll have access to everything. She won't even see it coming." She turned, saw me standing there. For just a second, her mask slipped, and I saw pure hatred in her eyes. Then she smiled, ended the call quickly. "Constance, what a surprise. I was just talking to my doula about the birth plan. You gave me such a fright. But I'd heard enough. I'd seen enough. My daughter-in-law wasn't just a gold digger. She was something far more dangerous. I just didn't realize until tonight exactly how dangerous she really was. Now, standing outside that supply room with Esperanza's evidence burning in my mind and William's world crumbling around him, I understood that the past 2.5 years had all been leading to this moment, to this hospital, to this planned murder. And I understood that the woman who'd systematically destroyed my relationship with my son, who'd stolen my home, who'd fabricated an entire identity to trap a grieving man, was about to learn that Constance Hartford hadn't survived 57 years by being anyone's victim. "Let's go," I said to Esperanza. "I want to see exactly what performance she's prepared for us." Esperanza led us through a maze of corridors I'd never noticed during my previous visits to Greenwich Memorial. William walked beside me in complete silence, his face still that awful shade of pale, his breathing shallow and quick. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay, but I couldn't lie to my son. Not now. Nothing about this situation was okay. "The observation room is soundproofed on their side," Esperanza explained as we walked, her voice low and professional. "It's designed so medical students can discuss cases without disturbing procedures. There's an intercom system that lets you hear what's happening in the surgical suite, but they can't hear you unless you activate the speaker, which you won't." "How do you know so much about this hospital?" I asked. "I worked here for 15 years before I retired from nursing. I know every corner of this building." She stopped at an unmarked door and pulled out a key card. "This access should have been deactivated when I switched to housekeeping, but IT is notoriously slow around here. Lucky for us." The door opened into a small, dark room with a large window taking up most of one wall. Except it wasn't really a window. From this side, I could see clearly into the brightly lit surgical suite beyond. From their side, it would just look like a mirror. And there she was, Amber. My daughter-in-law was lying on the surgical table, very much awake and very much not in any distress. She was laughing. Actually laughing while Dr. Bradbury arranged something under the surgical drapes covering her lower body. I watched him pull out what looked like medical bags filled with dark liquid, positioning them carefully. "Those are the blood packs," Esperanza said quietly, moving to a control panel on the wall. "Animal blood in medical-grade bags. When he cuts them open, it'll look like she's hemorrhaging. Very dramatic, very convincing to anyone who isn't expecting it." She flipped a switch, and suddenly we could hear them. "Still think this is insane," Dr. Bradbury was saying, his hands shaking as he worked. "If anyone figures this out, I lose my medical license. I go to prison. Amber, the money is absolutely worth it," Amber cut him off, her voice sharp. "And nobody is going to figure anything out because you're going to do exactly what we rehearsed. Simple C-section, lots of theatrical blood. I scream and cry on cue, and if Constance shows up playing the concerned grandmother, you take care of her. Clean, simple, untraceable. Untraceable except for the massive dose of anesthesia that will stop her heart," Dr. Bradbury said, and I felt William flinch beside me. "Which you will explain as a tragic reaction, a previously unknown allergy, a stress-induced cardiac event. Pick your excuse, Simon. You're the doctor. Make it believable. Amber adjusted herself on the table, checking her appearance in the overhead surgical light like she was preparing for a photo shoot. God, I'll probably have to comfort William for months after this. The grieving son, the traumatized new father. It's going to be exhausting. You really hate her that much? Dr. Bradbury asked. Hate is too strong a word. I just need her gone. Amber's voice was casual, like she was discussing getting rid of old furniture. Constance Hartford is the only thing standing between me and complete financial security. William is easy to manipulate, always has been. But his mother keeps poisoning him against me, hiring investigators, showing up uninvited. As long as she's alive, she's a threat. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about money. This was about complete control over my son's life. Once she's dead, William will be so broken that he'll lean on me completely, Amber continued. His wife, the mother of his child, the only family he has left. I'll be everything to him, and every single dollar of the Hartford fortune will be mine to access. Dr. Bradbury pulled out a syringe from a nearby tray, checking the dosage. This is enough to stop an elephant's heart. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Amber smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Just make sure you wait for the right moment. It has to look natural, like you were trying to help her. Maybe she offers to donate blood. Maybe she insists on being in the delivery room. Whatever the excuse, once you get that needle in her, she's got maybe 90 seconds before cardiac arrest. William made a choking sound beside me. I grabbed his hand and squeezed hard, keeping him grounded, keeping him quiet. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Bradbury started, is working a double shift and won't be in this room during the actual procedure, Amber finished. I checked the schedule myself. It'll be just you, me, and 2 surgical nurses who will be too focused on the baby to notice what you're doing with dear old Constance. By the time they realize something's wrong, she'll be dead, and you'll be performing heroic CPR that just unfortunately doesn't work. The casual way she discussed my murder was almost worse than the plan itself. There was no emotion in her voice, no hesitation, no remorse. I was just an obstacle to be removed. What time is it? Amber asked, glancing at the surgical clock. 11:58. William called his mother at 11:47. It's a 20-minute drive from her apartment if she hits every light. Maybe 12 minutes if she speeds. Amber did the math quickly. She should be arriving any minute. Make sure you're ready. Dr. Yu. Bradbury nodded, positioning himself near the surgical equipment. I watched him check the syringe again, then place it in his pocket where it would be easily accessible. What about the baby? He asked. Real C-section, right? You're actually 37 weeks? Of course it's real, Amber snapped. I'm not a complete monster. The baby is fine, full term, healthy. That's the beauty of this plan. We do an actual C-section, pull out an actual healthy baby, and everyone is so relieved and emotional that nobody questions the tragic death of William's mother, who just happened to have an allergic reaction to medication she'd never been tested for. She paused, then added with a smirk, plus, having a real newborn makes the whole grieving new mother act much more convincing. William will be so busy taking care of me and the baby that he won't have time to think too hard about the circumstances of his mother's death. I felt sick. She'd thought of everything. Showtime in 2 minutes, Dr. Bradbury said, checking his watch. I should call William in, make it look good. Wait, Amber held up a hand. Did you disable the observation room? My heart stopped. What? Dr. Bradbury looked confused. The observation room. The one with the one-way glass where medical students watch procedures. Did you make sure it's locked and disabled? Why would I? Dr. Bradbury started. Because I don't want any witnesses, you idiot. Amber's voice rose sharply. What if someone decided to watch? What if there's a student or a resident who... It's almost midnight, Dr. Bradbury interrupted. There's no one here. The room requires a key card that only attending physicians and senior nurses have. Housekeeping definitely doesn't have access. Esperanza's hand moved subtly to her pocket, covering the key card she'd used to let us in. Fine, Amber said after a moment. But check the hallway. Make sure we're clear before you bring William to the observation area. I thought you wanted him in the waiting room. Change of plans. Amber's smile was calculating. If Constance shows up, She'll want to see what's happening. Maternal instinct or whatever. We'll bring William to the observation room, let him watch through the glass while his wife gives birth. And when Constance inevitably barges in trying to be involved, you'll intercept her, offer to let her help with the blood donation or monitoring or something medical sounding, and that's when you do it. In front of her son? Dr. Bradbury looked horrified. He'll be on the other side of the glass. He'll see his mother collapse, but he won't know why. By the time he gets through the doors, you'll already be performing emergency measures. All very heroic, all very tragic. Amber's voice was smooth, practiced. The trauma of watching his wife give birth and his mother die will bond him to me in ways nothing else could. Shared tragedy, shared grief. It's perfect. I wanted to vomit. She'd planned to make William watch me die, planned to use his trauma as another tool for manipulation. William was shaking beside me, silent tears streaming down his face. I pulled him close, let him bury his face in my shoulder to muffle any sound he might make. "Okay," Dr. Bradbury said, clearly trying to steady his nerves. "Okay, I'll go get William. Bring him to the observation room, then come back and we'll start the procedure. If Constance shows up." "When Constance shows up," Amber corrected. "That woman can't resist being the center of attention. She'll show up. When she shows up, I'll handle it." "You'd better." Amber's voice turned cold. "Because if you screw this up, Simon, if anything goes wrong, I'll make sure everyone knows you approached me with this plan. I'll say you were obsessed with me, that you threatened me, that I was too scared to go to the police. I have text messages I can doctor, I have witnesses I can buy. You'll go to prison for attempted murder while I play the victim. Again." The threat was clear. Dr. Bradbury had no leverage, no power. He was trapped in this conspiracy as surely as if Amber had put a gun to his head. "I understand," he said quietly. "Good." Amber settled back on the table. "Now go get my husband. Let's give him a show he'll never forget." Dr. Bradbury walked toward the surgical suite doors. I watched Esperanza quickly move to the observation room door, locking it from the inside and switching off the lights completely. We stood in total darkness, only the light from the surgical suite providing any visibility. "He's going to bring William here," I whispered. "I know," Esperanza whispered back. "Stay absolutely silent. Don't move. Don't speak. Let him think the room is empty." We waited in the darkness. I counted my heartbeats, trying to stay calm, trying to process everything I'd just heard. 30 seconds, 60, 90. Then we heard Dr. Bradbury's voice in the hallway outside, artificially cheerful and reassuring. "Mr. Hartford, why don't you come with me to the observation room? You'll be able to see everything without being in the way of the medical team. Your wife is doing great. We're about to begin the procedure. Can I talk to her first?" That was William's voice, thick with tears. "She's being prepped right now, but you'll be able to see her in just a moment. Come on. The observation room is right here." The door handle rattled, locked. "That's strange," Dr. Bradbury muttered. "Keycard should work." He tried again. The lock clicked, but the door didn't open because Esperanza was holding it shut from the inside, her body braced against it. "Maintenance must have jammed it again," Dr. Bradbury said smoothly. "No matter. You can watch from the hallway window instead. Same view." Footsteps retreated. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "That was close," Esperanza whispered. We heard Dr. Bradbury positioning William somewhere down the hall, probably at one of the smaller observation windows that dotted the surgical wing. Then his footsteps returned to the surgical suite. "We're ready," he announced. Through the glass, I watched him approach Amber, watched him begin the actual procedure. 2 surgical nurses entered, both looking tired from long shifts, both completely unaware of what they were really participating in. "Scalpel, Doctor," Bradbury said, and one of the nurses handed it to him. I'd seen enough medical shows to know what a C-section involved, but watching it happen to someone I knew, even someone who'd just planned my murder, was surreal. Dr. Bradbury worked with steady hands, making the incision, reaching for the blood bags hidden under the drapes. "Oh, God!" one of the nurses gasped as dark liquid suddenly spilled out. "That's a lot of blood!" "Hemorrhage!" Dr. Bradbury shouted, perfectly on cue. "I need suction! I need—" Amber started screaming, loud, terrified screams that probably carried all the way to the waiting room. She was good, I had to admit. She sounded genuinely terrified. "The baby!" she shrieked. "Save my baby! Please, save my baby!" More theatrical blood. The nurses were moving quickly now, responding to what looked like a genuine emergency. Dr. Bradbury was calling out medical terminology that sounded impressive but meant nothing, creating the illusion of crisis. And then I heard William's voice from somewhere in the hallway. "What's happening? What's wrong?" His voice was panicked, desperate. "Someone tell me what's happening." I wanted to go to him, to tell him it was all fake, that his wife was fine and his child was fine, but his mother had almost been murdered. But Esperanza's hand on my arm kept me still. "Wait," she breathed. "The police are almost here. Just wait." Dr. Bradbury was pulling out the baby now. Through all the staged chaos, he was actually performing the medical procedure competently. I watched him lift a tiny, squirming infant from the surgical field, heard the baby's first cry pierce through Amber's continued screaming. "It's a boy," one of the nurses said, her voice filled with relief. "Is he okay?" Amber asked, and for just a second, her voice sounded almost genuinely concerned. "Is my baby okay?" "He's perfect, Dr. E," Bradbury said, and there was actual emotion in his voice as he handed the infant to a nurse for cleaning. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good color, good cry. He's absolutely perfect. Whatever else Amber was, she'd just given birth to a healthy child. My grandchild, William's son. The surgical nurses were focused on the baby now, cleaning him, weighing him, performing all the standard checks. Dr. Bradbury was still bent over Amber, pretending to control the fake hemorrhage. "Where's Constance?" Amber hissed, quiet enough that the nurses wouldn't hear. "She should be here by now." "Maybe she didn't come," Dr. Bradbury whispered back. "She came. That controlling bitch always comes." Amber's voice was frustrated. "William probably has her in the waiting room. Go get her. Tell her I'm asking for her. Tell her I need family support. Whatever. Just get her in here. The procedure is fine, and you know it. The baby's out, the fake blood is sufficient, the nurses are distracted. Go get her." Dr. Bradbury straightened, looking uncertain. He glanced at the nurses, who were still cooing over the baby, then nodded. "I'll be right back," he announced. "Mrs. Hartford is stable. Continue monitoring vitals." He walked toward the surgical suite doors, and I knew this was it. This was the moment he'd come looking for me, expecting to find me anxious and worried in some waiting room, ready to be led like a lamb to slaughter. Esperanza's phone buzzed silently. She glanced at it and showed me the screen. "Detectives in building. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We just needed to survive 2 more minutes." Dr. Bradbury's footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. We heard him calling out, "Mrs. Hartford? Constance Hartford? Your daughter-in-law is asking for you." Silence. "Mrs. Hartford?" More footsteps, moving away from us, searching. Esperanza unlocked her phone and pulled up a video file. "Watch," she whispered, showing me the screen. It was footage from yesterday, showing Amber and Dr. Bradbury in an empty surgical suite, rehearsing. Amber was lying on a table, practicing her screams, her expressions of pain. Dr. Bradbury was coaching her. "More terror in your voice," he was saying. "You need to sound like you genuinely think you're dying." Amber tried again, adding trembling to her screams. "Better. And remember, when you ask for Constance, sound weak but hopeful, like you want to make peace before you die." "I should get an Oscar for this performance," Amber had laughed. The video continued showing them rehearse every detail, every line, every moment of the conspiracy. "I've already sent this to the police," Esperanza whispered, "along with everything else. Even if something goes wrong here tonight, even if they somehow get away, this evidence will bury them." We heard Dr. Bradbury returning to the surgical suite. "I can't find her," he said, and I could hear the worry in his voice. "She's not in the waiting room, not in the hallways. I asked at the nurses' station, and they said they haven't seen her." "What?" Amber's voice was sharp. "That's impossible. William called her. She has to be here." "Maybe she didn't come. Maybe she—" "No." Amber sat up slightly on the table, ignoring the nurses' protests. "Something's wrong. She would have come. She always comes." For the first time, I heard uncertainty in her voice. Fear, even. "Should we abort?" Dr. Bradbury asked quietly. Abort what? We already did the C-section. The baby's here. Everything is done except... Amber stopped. Except for killing her. Maybe it's a sign, Dr. Bradbury said. Maybe we should just... No. Amber's voice turned hard again. We stick to the plan. She'll show up eventually. When she does, you do what we agreed. That's when we heard the sirens. The sirens started distant, but grew louder with each passing second. I watched Amber's face through the observation glass as the sound registered, watched her expression shift from confusion to alarm, to something that looked like pure panic. What is that? She asked, trying to sit up further on the surgical table. One of the nurses gently pushed her back down. Mrs. Hartford, you need to stay still. We're not finished here. I said, what is that? Amber's voice rose sharply. Why are there police sirens? Dr. Bradbury had gone completely white. His hands were shaking so badly he had to grip the edge of the surgical table to steady himself. I don't know. Could be anything. An accident nearby, an emergency, in a hospital parking lot? Amber's eyes were darting around the room now, searching for threats she couldn't see. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. The sirens cut off abruptly. Silence filled the surgical suite for maybe 5 seconds before we heard car doors slamming, multiple pairs of footsteps, voices giving commands. Simon! Amber hissed. What did you do? Nothing. I swear I didn't. Then why are the police here? I don't know. I felt a grim satisfaction watching them turn on each other. These two people who'd conspired to murder me were now drowning in their own paranoia and guilt. Esperanza pulled out her phone and typed quickly. Seconds later, my own phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Detectives at main entrance. Coming to surgical wing. Stay in observation room until given all clear. They're here, I whispered to William, squeezing his hand. It's almost over. My son hadn't said a word since we'd entered this room. He'd just stood there in the darkness, watching his wife give birth to his child while planning the murder of his mother. I couldn't imagine what was going through his mind. Through the glass, one of the surgical nurse's phones buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then showed it to her colleague. Both women looked confused. Dr. Bradbury, one of them said carefully. We're getting an alert. Security is asking all personnel to remain in current locations. Something about a police investigation. Amber made a sound like a trapped animal. No, this isn't happening. Mrs. Hartford, please calm down. Your blood pressure. I don't care about my blood pressure. Amber was trying to get off the table now, pulling at the IV lines in her arm. I need to leave. I need to get out of here right now. You just had major surgery, the nurse protested. You can't. Get away from me. Amber shoved the nurse hard enough that the woman stumbled backward. The baby, now cleaned and wrapped in a blanket, started crying at the sudden commotion. Dr. Bradbury grabbed Amber's shoulders, forcing her back onto the table. Stop it. You're making this worse. If you panic, if you run, they'll know something's wrong. They already know something's wrong, you idiot. Amber's voice was rising to a shriek. The police are here. How do they know unless someone told them? Nobody told them anything. We were careful, obviously not careful enough. The surgical suite doors opened and 2 detectives walked in, shields held high. Behind them, I could see uniformed officers securing the hallway. Dr. Simon Bradbury? Amber Kingsley Hartford? The lead detective was a woman in her 40s, short dark hair, eyes that missed nothing. I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. Nobody move. The surgical nurses backed away immediately, hands raised, clearly confused about what was happening. The baby continued crying in one nurse's arms. What is this? Dr. Bradbury tried to sound authoritative, but his voice cracked. This is a sterile surgical environment. You can't just... We have a warrant for both your arrests, Detective Morrison interrupted. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, attempted medical malpractice resulting in endangerment. Should I continue? Amber's face had gone from pale to completely bloodless. I don't know what you're talking about. I just gave birth. I'm the victim here. Save it. The detective pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Suddenly, Amber's own voice filled the room, crystal clear through the phone's speaker. Once she's dead, William will be so broken that he'll lean on me completely. His wife, the mother of his child, the only family he has left. I'll be everything to him. And every single dollar of the Hartford fortune will be mine to access. Amber's eyes went wide. That's not... You can't. Where did you get that? We have 17 separate recordings, Detective Morrison said calmly. 43 photographs. Video evidence of you and Dr. Bradbury rehearsing this fake emergency. And a very detailed statement from a witness who's been documenting your conspiracy for 3 weeks. Esperanza, Amber breathed, and her face twisted with rage. That nosy bitch. She was always watching, always. She stopped, realizing she was confirming everything. Dr. Bradbury, the detective turned to him. Do you want to make this easy on yourself? Because right now, you're looking at the same charges she is. But if you cooperate, I'll tell you everything, Dr. Bradbury blurted out immediately. She approached me, she planned it all, she threatened me. I have gambling debts, and she found out and she used it against me. I never wanted to hurt anyone. You coward, Amber screamed. We had a deal. The deal is over. Dr. Bradbury pulled the syringe from his pocket and threw it on the floor. There. That's what she wanted me to use. Massive dose of anesthesia, enough to cause cardiac arrest in Constance Hartford. Amber wanted me to kill her mother-in-law and make it look like an allergic reaction. The nurses gasped. One of them clutched the baby tighter, backing further away from Amber like she was something poisonous. Detective Morrison's partner moved forward with handcuffs. Amber Kingsley Hartford, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. No! Amber was fighting now, thrashing on the surgical table. You can't do this. I just had a baby. You can't arrest a woman who just gave birth. This is cruel and unusual punishment. You can receive medical care in custody, the detective said flatly as they cuffed her hands. You have the right to remain silent. Where's William? Amber's voice changed suddenly, becoming softer, more vulnerable. The mask was back on. I want to see my husband. William, they're trying to take me away. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. That's when Esperanza unlocked the observation room door. Light from the hallway spilled in as she stepped out, with William and me right behind her. Amber's eyes found us immediately. Found me, standing there very much alive, very much not murdered. Found William, his face wet with tears, looking at her like she was a stranger. William, she tried again, her voice breaking. Baby, please, you know me. You know I would never... I heard everything, William said quietly. Every word, every plan, every lie. Amber's face crumpled. Not with genuine emotion, I realized, but with the realization that her performance wouldn't work anymore. The mask shattered completely, and what was underneath was cold calculation and fury. You were supposed to be dead, she spat at me, all pretense gone. You were supposed to be dead and he was supposed to be mine. But I'm not, I said calmly. Thanks to a woman you dismissed as just the cleaning lady. Thanks to someone who cared more about doing the right thing than you ever cared about anything except money. Detective Morrison finished reading Amber her rights as officers led her and Dr. Bradbury out of the surgical suite. Amber was still screaming, still threatening, still trying to manipulate her way out of consequences that were finally catching up to her. The baby's cries echoed in the sudden quiet they left behind. The surgical suite felt eerily quiet after they took Amber and Dr. Bradbury away. One of the nurses was still holding my grandson, rocking him gently as his cries began to soften. The other nurse stood frozen, staring at the door where the police had just exited, clearly trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Detective Morrison remained behind, her partner having left with the arrests. She approached us carefully, her expression professional, but not unkind. Mrs. Hartford, I presume, she said, extending a hand. Constance Hartford. I shook her hand, surprised at how steady mine was. Thank you for coming so quickly. We got the call from Ms. Cruz about 40 minutes ago. She'd already emailed us preliminary evidence earlier this week, but tonight's recordings were the final pieces we needed for the arrest warrants. Detective Morrison glanced at Esperanza with genuine respect. Your documentation was exceptional, forensic quality. Made our job considerably easier. Esperanza nodded quietly, staying in the background as always. William hadn't moved. He was staring at the baby through the observation window, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I touched his arm gently. William, sweetheart, that's my son, he said, his voice hollow. My son. And his mother just tried to have you killed. I know. How am I supposed to... His voice cracked. Mom, How am I supposed to be a father to him knowing what she is? How do I look at him and not see her? How do I— "One moment at a time," I said softly. "That's all any of us can do right now." Detective Morrison cleared her throat. "Mr. Hartford, I'm going to need statements from all of you, but that can wait until tomorrow given the circumstances. Right now you have a newborn son who needs you." William's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I don't know if I can. I don't know how to—" "You can," I said firmly, "because that baby didn't choose his mother. He didn't choose any of this. He's innocent, William, completely innocent." The nurse holding the baby approached us carefully. "Mr. Hartford, would you like to hold your son?" William looked terrified. I don't—" "Go on," I encouraged. "He needs his father." Slowly, hesitantly, William reached out. The nurse placed the tiny bundle in his arms with practiced gentleness, showing him how to support the baby's head. For a long moment, William just stared down at his son's face. The baby had stopped crying and was looking up at him with unfocused, newborn eyes. "He looks like you," I said. And it was true. I could see Richard in that tiny face, could see the Hartford features already emerging. "He looks just like you did when you were born." "Hi," William whispered to the baby. "Hi, little guy. I'm your dad." His voice broke on the last word and tears started falling again, but he was smiling through them. "I'm your dad, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. I promise." I felt my own eyes burning. Despite everything, despite the horror of the past few hours, there was life here. New life, innocent and perfect. Detective Morrison was watching with what looked like sympathy. "Mr. Hartford, I need to inform you of some legal realities. Your wife will be held without bail, given the severity of the charges and flight risk. You'll need to make decisions about the baby's care, about custody arrangements." "He stays with me," William said immediately, with more certainty than I'd heard in his voice all night. "Whatever I have to do, whatever paperwork I have to sign, he stays with me. He's my son." "That's good," the detective said, "because there's another complication you need to know about." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "What complication?" Detective Morrison pulled out her phone, scrolling through files. As we were arresting Mrs. Kingsley Hartford, my partner ran her information through our system. Standard procedure. Her real name isn't Amber Kingsley. William's head snapped up. "What? It's Amber Reeves. She legally changed it 4 years ago, right before her father went to prison." The detective showed us her phone screen. "This is her actual background." I read the file with growing horror. Amber Reeves, daughter of convicted fraud artist Marcus Reeves. But there was more. So much more. "She has 2 prior arrests," Detective Morrison continued. "Both sealed because the victims dropped charges. One in Boston, one in Chicago. Both cases involved wealthy widowers who she targeted, entered relationships with, and systematically defrauded. In the Chicago case, the man's adult daughter suspected what was happening and confronted Amber. 3 days later, that daughter was hospitalized after her brakes mysteriously failed. Oh my God, I breathed. The daughter survived but refused to testify, said she was too scared. The case was dropped." Detective Morrison looked at William with genuine concern. "Mr. Hartford, your wife is not just a gold digger. She's a career criminal with a pattern of targeting grieving men from wealthy families. And based on the Chicago case, she's willing to escalate to violence when threatened." William had gone pale again. "The investigator my mom hired, he only found information about her father, about the money problems. He never found this. Because she's very good at covering her tracks," the detective said. "She uses different names, different backgrounds. The only reason we found the connection is because she was careless this time. She got greedy, moved too fast, and thanks to Ms. Cruz's documentation, we had enough evidence to dig deeper." I thought about the past 2.5 years, the whirlwind romance, the quick marriage, how perfectly Amber had played William, had identified his vulnerabilities and exploited them, how she'd systematically isolated him from everyone who might question her. "How many others?" I asked quietly. "How many other men has she done this to?" "We're not sure yet. We're working with FBI Financial Crimes Division now." Detective Morrison put her phone away. "But Mrs. Hartford, if you hadn't hired that investigator, if Ms. Cruz hadn't been paying attention, if any number of things had gone differently tonight, you would be dead. And your son would be next. Next? William's voice was sharp. What do you mean next? The detective hesitated. In the Chicago case, after the daughter was hospitalized, the father changed his will to exclude Amber completely. He died 6 months later. Heart attack, they said. Natural causes. The implication hung in the air like poison. You think she killed him, I said. I think it's suspicious that 2 wealthy men who got involved with Amber Reeves both died of heart problems within a year of meeting her. I think it's suspicious that she specifically planned to use cardiac arrest-inducing drugs on you tonight. Detective Morrison's expression was grim. And I think that if she'd succeeded in killing you, Mr. Hartford, eventually you would have ended up dead too. Maybe after another child or two. Maybe after she'd drained enough assets. But eventually, William's arms tightened around his son protectively. She would have killed me? Her own husband? You were never her husband in any meaningful sense, I said gently. You were a mark, a target, the son of a wealthy widow, grieving and vulnerable. She identified you, researched you, positioned herself perfectly to catch you at your weakest moment. The charity gala, William whispered. She said it was chance that we met, but she knew I'd be there. She knew everything about me before we ever spoke. Most likely, Detective Morrison confirmed. One of the nurses approached hesitantly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to move the baby to the nursery for monitoring. Standard procedure for all newborns, and especially given the unusual circumstances of the delivery. William looked panicked. I don't want to let him go. You can come with him, the nurse said kindly. We'll get him settled, do all the standard checks, and then you can stay with him as long as you like. Dads are welcome in the nursery. Go, I encouraged. I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere. William nodded slowly and followed the nurse out of the surgical suite, cradling his son like the most precious thing in the world, which I supposed he was. When they were gone, Detective Morrison turned to me and Esperanza. I need to take formal statements from both of you. Can we use a conference room somewhere? Of course, I said. But first, I need to know something. What happens to Amber now? She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Given the severity of the charges, the evidence we have, and her history, I'd be shocked if she gets bail. She's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum if convicted on all counts. And the baby? That's complicated. She's his biological mother. Even if convicted, she has parental rights that would need to be legally terminated. That process can take time. But William has custody? As the father, yes. And given that the mother is incarcerated and facing serious charges, the court will almost certainly grant him full temporary custody immediately. Detective Morrison paused. Mrs. Hartford, I have to ask, what are your intentions regarding your grandson? What do you mean? I mean that your son just discovered his wife is a serial con artist who planned to murder his mother. He has a newborn baby and no partner to help raise him. He's going to need support. I thought about the past 18 months, about being pushed out of my own home, isolated from my son, dismissed and discarded, about the Cold War with Amber, the accusations that I was controlling and jealous and unable to let go. And I thought about William's face when he held his son for the first time. I'm going to do whatever my son needs me to do, I said firmly. If he wants to move back into the guest house so I can help with the baby, we'll do that. If he wants space to figure things out on his own, I'll give him space. Whatever he needs, I'm here. Esperanza spoke for the first time in a while. He's going to need therapy, serious therapy. Being manipulated like that, for that long, by someone you loved and trusted, it does damage. You sound like you know from experience, I said gently. My ex-husband was a narcissist. Took me 8 years to see it, another 3 to leave him. Esperanza's expression was distant. The guilt is the worst part. Feeling like you should have known, should have seen the signs. Feeling like it's your fault for being fooled. It wasn't William's fault, I said fiercely. He was grieving. She targeted him specifically because he was vulnerable. I know that. You know that. But it'll take him a long time to believe it. Esperanza looked at me with understanding. And you're going to have to be patient with him. There will be days he resents you for being right about her. Days he takes his anger out on you because you're safe and she's not there to receive it. Days he can't look at that baby without seeing her. I can handle it, I said. I've survived worse than my son's misplaced anger. Detective Morrison's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, then looked at us with something like satisfaction. Dr. Bradbury is singing like a canary. He's given us everything. Bank records, text messages, detailed timeline of the entire conspiracy. He's even admitting that Amber approached him specifically because she'd researched his gambling debts and knew he was desperate. So the case is solid, I said. It's airtight. Even without his confession, we have more than enough, but this makes it absolutely certain. The detective smiled slightly. Ms. Cruz, you did remarkable work. Have you ever considered consulting for law enforcement? Esperanza shook her head. I retired for a reason, but I'm glad I could help. We spent the next 2 hours in a hospital conference room, going over every detail. I told them about hiring the private investigator, about the confrontation with William, about being banished from my own home. Esperanza walked them through her surveillance, her documentation, the moment she realized what was being planned. By the time we finished, it was nearly 3 a.m. I was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, but I needed to see William before I could even think about rest. I found him in the nursery, sitting in a rocking chair with his son sleeping against his chest. He looked up when I entered, and I saw everything in his eyes: grief, shame, love, fear, determination. Hey, Mom, he said softly. Hey, sweetheart. I pulled up another chair beside him. How's he doing? Perfect. They said he's completely healthy. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, no complications at all. William looked down at the baby. I haven't named him yet. We had picked out names, but all of those were her choices, and I can't use any of them now. That's okay. You have time. I keep thinking about what the detective said, about how she would have eventually killed me too. His voice was barely a whisper. I brought her into our lives, Mom. I married her. I got her pregnant. I gave her access to everything. I almost got you killed because I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me. William, no. Yes. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. You tried to warn me. You hired an investigator and showed me the truth, and I threw you out of your own house. I chose her over you. I believed her lies and called you controlling and jealous, and I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I knelt beside his chair, careful not to disturb the baby, and took my son's free hand in both of mine. Listen to me, I said firmly. What happened was not your fault. You were grieving your father. You were vulnerable. She's a professional con artist who specifically targets people in your exact situation. She researched you, studied you, manipulated you with surgical precision. You are not stupid for falling for it. You're human. I should have known. How? How should you have known when she'd done this successfully multiple times before? When she'd fooled police and lawyers and other smart, capable people? I squeezed his hand. William, you are a victim. She victimized you. And yes, you made mistakes. You pushed me away when I tried to help. But you did that because she'd already gotten into your head, already isolated you, already made you doubt everyone except her. That's what abusers do. She abused me? William sounded almost surprised. Emotionally, psychologically, financially. Yes. I brushed tears from his cheek. And you're going to need help processing that. Professional help. But you're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. William looked down at his sleeping son. I don't know how to do this alone. You're not alone, I said. You have me, and you have this perfect little boy who needs his father. Will you help me? William's voice was small, vulnerable. The voice of the little boy who used to crawl into my lap when he was scared. Will you help me raise him? I know I don't deserve to ask after everything I said to you, but of course I'll help you, I interrupted. William, you're my son. He's my grandson. We're family. That never changed, not even when Amber tried her hardest to destroy it. William started crying again, deep, racking sobs that shook his whole body. I held him as best I could while he clutched his sleeping son, letting him release months of manipulation and lies and betrayed trust. And I thought about Esperanza, watching from the shadows, about how close we'd come to disaster. About how one woman's instinct for justice and unwillingness to look away had saved my life and ultimately saved my family. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and custody hearings and press attention and all the messy aftermath of Amber's crimes. But tonight, in this quiet nursery, my son was safe, my grandson was healthy, and our family, battered but not broken, was beginning to heal. 3 months have passed since that night at Greenwich Memorial Hospital. 3 months of lawyers and court dates and depositions. 3 months of therapy sessions for William, who's slowly learning to forgive himself for being human. 3 months of learning how to be a grandmother to a baby boy who looks more like his father every single day. We named him Richard, William's choice, made 1 week after the arrest when he was finally ready to honor his father's memory properly. Richard James Hartford, RJ for short. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure innocence, who sleeps in a nursery down the hall from his father's childhood bedroom in the house that I've finally reclaimed as home. William moved back in 2 days after Amber's arrest. He couldn't bear to stay in the master suite where he'd lived with her, couldn't stomach the redecorated rooms and the Instagram-perfect aesthetic she'd imposed on every corner. We spent a weekend systematically removing every trace of her presence. Her clothes donated, her furniture sold, her photos deleted. The house doesn't look quite like it did when Richard was alive, but it feels like mine again. Like ours. The trial was mercifully quick. Dr. Bradbury's confession and Esperanza's documentation made the prosecution's case ironclad. Amber tried every manipulation tactic she knew. She cried for the jury, claimed she was the victim of Dr. Bradbury's obsession, insisted the recordings were taken out of context. She even tried to use the baby, telling the court through crocodile tears that her newborn son needed his mother. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes, guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, identity theft, and half a dozen other charges. The judge gave her 18 years with no possibility of parole for 15. She'll be 63 when she gets out, if she serves the full sentence. I watched her face when they read the verdict. No more masks, no more performances. Just cold rage as she stared at me across the courtroom. "This isn't over," she mouthed silently. But it is over. Her parental rights were terminated last month. The FBI investigation uncovered 2 more victims, both deceased, both deaths now being reviewed as suspicious. She's never getting out early. She's never getting access to RJ. And she's never, ever getting access to the Hartford fortune she was willing to kill for. Dr. Bradbury got 8 years as part of his plea deal. He lost his medical license permanently, but at least he'll be out while he still has some life left to rebuild. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Then I remember the syringe he carried in his pocket, ready to stop my heart, and the sympathy evaporates. William is doing better. Some days are harder than others. He still has nightmares about finding out the truth, about watching through that observation window. His therapist says it's a form of PTSD, that being psychologically manipulated for 2 years doesn't heal overnight. But he's trying. He shows up for RJ every single day, changes diapers at 3 a.m., walks the floor when the baby won't sleep, learns how to do the things that terrify him because being a good father matters more than his fear. And he talks to me again. Really talks, the way he used to before Amber. We have coffee in the mornings while RJ naps, and William tells me about his therapy sessions, about the shame he's working through, about the slow process of learning to trust his own judgment again. "I keep thinking about all the red flags I ignored," he said yesterday, staring into his coffee cup. "The way she always had an answer for everything. The way she'd cry at exactly the right moment to shut down any question I had. The way I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly afraid of upsetting her. That's what emotional abuse does," I said gently. "It makes you doubt yourself so completely that you can't see what's right in front of you." "How did you see it?" he asked. "How did you know when I couldn't?" "Because I wasn't in love with her. Because I'd built a life on trusting my instincts, and I knew something was wrong even if I couldn't prove it yet." I reached across the table and took his hand. "And because I'm your mother, I'll always protect you, even when you don't want me to." William's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything I said, for kicking you out, for choosing her over you." "Stop," I interrupted. "We've been through this. You were manipulated by a professional. You have nothing to apologize for. I have everything to apologize for. Then I accept your apology. Again. For the 100th time." I smiled at him. "Now, can we please move forward?" He laughed, just a little. "You're very bossy, you know that? I prefer the term decisively maternal. These moments of lightness are still rare, but they're coming more frequently. William is healing, Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. Esperanza has become a fixture in our lives. She retired from housekeeping at the hospital and now spends her afternoons here twice a week, teaching me and William things about baby care that the books don't cover and sharing her own stories of survival and recovery. She and I have developed an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding of what it means to save someone. Last week, I tried again to offer her money. A reward, compensation, anything. She refused, just like she'd refused every other time. I didn't do it for money, she said firmly. I did it because it was right, because my sister didn't get justice and you deserved to live. That's enough. Then let me set up a scholarship in your name, I countered, for nursing students, or donate to a cause you care about. Something. She thought about it for a long moment. There's a women's shelter in Stamford. They help victims of financial abuse, domestic violence, women escaping dangerous situations. If you want to do something, help them. I wrote a check for $100,000 that afternoon. It felt like the least I could do for the woman who saved my life. The private investigator, Marcus Chen, found me 2 weeks after the trial. He apologized profusely for missing Amber's criminal history, for not digging deep enough. I told him he'd found enough, that without his initial investigation, I might never have been vigilant enough to notice the dangers. He still seemed to feel he'd failed, so I hired him to do something else entirely. He's now tracking down the families of Amber's other victims, the widower in Chicago whose daughter was almost killed, the man in Boston who lost his savings, the 2 deceased men whose families deserve to know the truth about how they died. Marcus is helping them file civil suits, connecting them with investigators, ensuring that even from prison, Amber faces consequences for every life she destroyed. It's not about the money, it's about justice. It's about making sure that every single person she hurt gets their day in court, their moment of validation, their proof that they weren't crazy to suspect her. This morning, I was feeding RJ his bottle when William came downstairs with an envelope. His hands were shaking slightly as he handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it." Inside was a legal document. A new deed for the Greenwich house, transferring it officially back into my name alone. William had removed himself entirely from the title. "William, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "This is your house. It was always your house. You built it with Dad, you made it a home, and Amber tried to steal it from you just like she tried to steal everything else. I'm giving it back. Officially, legally, permanently." I felt tears prick my eyes. "But you and RJ live here. Where will you—" "We'll stay if you'll have us," William said. "Not as owners, but as your guests, your family, the way it should have been from the beginning." He smiled, sad but genuine. "I don't need to own this house, Mom. I just need to be welcome in it." "You're always welcome," I whispered, pulling him into a one-armed hug while still cradling RJ. "Both of you, for as long as you need." "Thank you," William said against my shoulder. "For everything, for never giving up on me, for seeing the truth when I couldn't, for being the kind of mother who fights for her son even when he doesn't deserve it." "You always deserved it," I said. "You always will." We stood there in the morning sunlight, 3 generations of Hartfords in the house that Richard built and Constance protected, and William will someday inherit properly when he's ready, when he's healed enough to accept it without shame. RJ made a small sound, finished with his bottle, and William took him from my arms to burp him. I watched my son with his son, watched him be gentle and patient and present in ways he never could have been while Amber had her claws in him. And I thought about that night in the hospital, about how close we came to losing everything, about Esperanza's quiet courage and William's devastating heartbreak, and the tiny baby who saved us all by simply existing, by being innocent enough that even in the depths of despair, William had something pure to fight for. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some families don't survive the kind of manipulation and betrayal we endured. But we did. Battered, scarred, still healing, but together. The Hartford fortune that Amber wanted so desperately? It's still here, managed carefully and invested wisely. But it's just money. What matters, what Amber never understood in her calculating narcissism, is that the real wealth was always in the family itself. My son is free. My grandson is safe. My home is mine again. and the woman who tried to destroy us all is behind bars where she belongs. That's not just an ending, that's justice. And in the quiet moments when I hold RJ and watch William smile at his son with uncomplicated love, I realize it's also something else. It's a beginning,